Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm wearing a really cool shirt with a little dinosaur on it. But more important than that, today we're going to be kind of talking about maintaining that positive attitude when it comes to the job hunting process, as well as just a couple tips and pointers here and there to kind of help maintain that positive energy as you go through this somewhat daunting and overwhelming process. This is a follow-up to my previous video about the do's and don'ts when it comes to putting together and writing cover letters and resumes, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. One of you left a really nice comment on that video, which I greatly appreciate, by the way, and you suggested that I do a follow-up video to that one, talking about how the job hunting process is sometimes a full-time job, and to give a couple of pointers on how not to feel discouraged during the process and to keep moving forward. And I really like that idea, so here we are. Now, the one point brought up in that comment that I really liked was this idea of treating the job application process like a full-time job. I think that's a really good mindset to have. And this isn't necessarily referring to the time commitment you should be putting into. Like, I'm not saying you should spend 40 hours a week applying for jobs. I'm sure you have plenty of other stuff going on, whether it's school, other jobs you're currently working, and spending 40 hours a week applying for jobs is just going to add more stress on top of all that, which is obviously what you don't want. No, when I say you should treat applying for a job like a full-time job, I'm more so referring to the effort that you should be putting into when it comes to that process. You know, if you're working a full-time job that you love, you want to excel in, and you really enjoy, you'd obviously be putting in that effort every single day to make sure that people that you're working with see that enjoyment and effort. And so if you treat the application process with the same attitude and effort, the hiring employer is going to realize that. Now, you may often find yourself during the job application process wanting to take a couple shortcuts. That might be, you know, not double checking the spelling on your resume or skipping that optional cover letter, which you should always include a cover letter if there's an option to do it. And now some of that stuff may not seem like a big deal. You might be saying, oh, it's optional, I don't have to do it, or so what if there's like one little spelling mistake on my resume? Well, just think, you know, if you take these shortcuts, how's that going to look compared to the people that didn't take those shortcuts? Each job you apply for needs to be treated as a new opportunity. You can't copy and paste the effort you put into one application into the next one. It's better to put 100% effort into 5 jobs you really want than 50% effort into 20 jobs that you kind of want. And this brings me to my next point, which is don't apply for jobs just for the sake of applying for jobs. You know, applying for more jobs isn't necessarily going to give you a better chance of getting one, quality over quantity. Now, in my last video, I brought up the point that you won't necessarily receive your dream job right off the bat. That's just the reality of life. However, that's okay because everybody has to start somewhere. There's multiple ways to reach that dream job, and it all starts by starting somewhere. Plus, who knows, things change, people change, you're gonna change. What you want right now might be completely different than what you want a year from now. It's completely okay. In fact, I strongly encourage it to go out there and explore your options. Just because you get a job doesn't mean you're stuck in it. And this goes way beyond the scope of just hunting for jobs. To use myself as an example, I graduated from college with a degree in filmmaking. It's actually a lot more complicated than that, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna say I went to school for filmmaking. So logically, I felt my next step was to move out to LA and make it big in the filmmaking world. However, I had trouble just even landing a simple job in that arena. You know, I completely understood that in the filmmaking world, I was probably gonna have to start off small, working as a VA, doing the stuff I don't want to do, and just slowly build my way up through the world, but I couldn't even land that first job. So instead, I got a job as a video editor for a sports broadcasting company, which was indeed another interest for me. I did a lot of sports broadcasting, video editing stuff in college, so I was still doing stuff that I enjoyed doing, but it wasn't what my end goal was. And in my 8 months of living in LA, I had a complete mental shift in what I realized I wanted to be doing in life. While I was doing all the stuff that I enjoyed in the job I had, I found I wasn't happy in it. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't happy. I'm like, this is what I wanted, right? So why am I not happy doing it? Well, this brings me to another point that I'd like to make, which is the job title isn't everything. A job is so much more than what the job title is. Location, the people you work with, the company culture a place has, all of these are super important to consider when you're looking for jobs, which is why it's also super important for you to do the research on the places you're applying for during the job application process. Now, I'm going to touch on this topic a little bit more in my next video about job interviews, but I think it's important to bring up now because you should be researching the places you're applying for well before you even start applying for them. Just because a job position sounds like it's a right fit for you doesn't necessarily mean that the company will be. To relate this back to my own experience, when I moved back to my hometown after living out in LA, I obviously spent a lot of time applying for new jobs. And Michigan didn't really have the same opportunities as a filmmaker that LA had, so it was honestly a pretty discouraging feeling like I was never going to find that job that I really wanted. However, there was one job opening I came across that really caught my eye. The title of the position was Creative Innovator, and that kind of stuck out to me because I felt like I never really seen that verbiage anywhere else. And I thought to myself, hey, this is pretty interesting. I'm going to kind of look into it further. And after looking into it, what the position essentially boiled down to was like a hybrid of a creative director and a marketing director. On top of all that, the position is for a real estate company, something I had no experience in whatsoever. However, the title itself just still continued to stick out to me. It had a nice ring to it. Like I said, it was unique, something I'd never really seen before, so I looked further into it. So despite the fact that I had no real experience in real estate, I had really only taken 1 or 2 marketing classes in college, and I was a 22-year-old college grad whose only real-world experience was as a video editor for a sports broadcasting company all the way out in LA, I decided what the heck, I'm going to apply for it anyways. Now, if it isn't super obvious from the super long buildup, yes, this is the job that I have right now. And this brings me to my next point, which is don't ever feel discouraged from applying for jobs that you might not necessarily feel like you're qualified for. I'm telling you right now that you are more qualified than you believe you are. And you want to know how I got this job? I researched the heck out of this company. I got to know who they were and what they do well before I ever hit the submit application button. I wrote that dreaded optional cover letter. I made it super personal, talked about them, talked about myself, but most importantly, I was honest and I was myself. I bet if you asked anybody who had any part in the interview process for my current job, they wouldn't recall my professional experience, my technical skills, anything like that. They would recall who I was, who I am as a person. And this brings me back to one of my main points I made in my resume and cover letter videos, which is to just be yourself. Let who you are shine through in every single step of the application process. Honestly, there's a lot of people on this planet who have the same technical experience and knowledge that you have, but there's only one you, and that is what's going to win employers over. Stay true to who you are and doing what you enjoy, and not only will you find a job that you love, but you'll find the people that you love doing your job with. So hopefully what I talked about here gave you that extra boost of motivation to keep your head high and continue nailing that job application process. And before I wrap this up, there is one more point I would kind of like to touch on, and that is don't compare yourself to others. I plan on doing a more in-depth, longer video on this topic, but it is something I wanted to bring up now. It's important to recognize that everybody's experience is different than yours. I spent a lot of my time in college comparing myself to others, thinking I'm not as good as them, or thinking these are the people that I keep losing all these jobs to. Not only is that unfair to yourself, but it's a completely pointless comparison to make. Like I said, everybody's life experience is different from yours. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is you. You know, keep in mind, just because you hit a little speed bump along the way, it does not eliminate all the progress you've made so far. If you like this video, be sure to show your appreciation by hitting that like button. And if you like the words that I have to say, be sure to subscribe as well to hear even more of the words that I have to say. And if you have any questions, video ideas, feedback, anything at all, be sure to leave it in the comments below. I also do some Photoshop and art tutorials, as that's a big passion of mine. So if that kind of stuff interests you, be sure to check those videos out on my channel as well. Thanks for watching.